Hi, this is Bill Johnston with Kansas Corn, and there are a lot of sayings that I like, but one of my favorites is an old Native American saying. We do not inherit the earth from our ancestors, we borrow it from our children. See, think about that one a little bit. See, I live on a farm that's been in our family for 3 or 4 generations, and I hope that I have the opportunity to pass that on to my children. But see, we can only do that if we protect the resources that we have. You know, I call the resources, the primary ones, the big three. You know, the air, the land, and of course, water. And farmers really have to protect water, air, and land so that they can have those resources for the next generation. So I want to visit with you today about some of those practices that we use to conserve water. Well, let's start by understanding the definition of the word conservation. It's the prevention of the wasteful use of a resource. One of the ways that farmers use water is through irrigation, and there's quite a few ways that we can use conservation using irrigation. One of those is called irrigation scheduling. You know, a field doesn't need the same amount of water at the same time in the same location every day. So a farmer will use some of the technology that they have, like soil probes and aerial imagery, to figure out when they need water and where they need water, and they use something called irrigation scheduling. Along with that, they use another management system called irrigation segmentation. It's choosing to water part of the fields instead of all the fields, or giving some of the field more water than other parts of the field instead of just spraying the same amount over the entire field. They can save a lot of water that way. Another method is the development of drought-tolerant crops. We've been able, when I say we, talking about scientists, have been able to genetically engineer certain crops so that they do not need as much water to be just as productive or more productive. Actually, that's allowed us to grow some crops where we haven't grown crops in the past, or places where crops weren't as productive because there was limited water. We also use cover crops, and cover crops are basically just like they sound. It's a crop that is grown outside of the regular planting season. You know, let's take corn for example. In Kansas, we may plant corn in April, and it grows through April, May, June, July, August, and maybe even September. Well, that's only 6 months out of the year. What about the other 6 months of the year when it's not covered with a crop? Well, we now use what we call a cover crop to plant over that crop. It may be perennial grass or possibly clover, and it shadows and protects, keeps that soil cool to slow down evaporation and erosion. And while cover crops are growing in popularity, realize that they don't work everywhere. In some places it's too wet, in other places it's too dry, and sometimes it just doesn't fit in the overall management of the farmer. 50 years ago, most farmers used what we now call traditional tillage. They would go out to a field and they would plow and disc at least once or twice and possibly field cultivate, all to prepare what they believed the best seed bed for their crop to grow in. Well, we've realized over time that all that tillage is not necessary. It packs the ground, it causes more water evaporation. So in recent years, we've gone to what we call conservation tillage. We leave out a few of those steps so that we don't work the soil as much. In fact, we use this thing called no-till, where we don't till the soil at all except when we plant, and the only portion that we till is the small slot of the area where we're going to plant that seed. I've only touched on a few of the water conservation methods that we use in farming. I've left out things like terracing and waterways and lots of other things associated with farming. I challenge you to look up some ways that farmers might conserve water in your neighborhood.